Thank you for joining us on The Experience. A little later on this evening, we have a canine friend who will be stopping by. That's always fun, so get ready for that. But we begin right now with the work of a very important organization in our area, and that is the 1540 organization. Jim and Carly and Rich are here to tell us a little bit about it. And Jim Coughlin, you are the founder of 1540. Before we hear a little bit about the stories of Carly and Rich, tell us a little bit about how 1540 came into being.
Well, first, thank you for having us here this evening, Hank. It began in 2007 when we learned that there was very little improvement in cancer survival rates of people 15 to 40. And in reviewing it, there was a white paper that came out through the National Institute of Health, and it said a prime reason was delayed diagnosis. And we hired a social media person to go out on the websites to see who might be doing anything about this, and there was nobody. So our family, we have my wife Nancy, 4 children and their spouses, and we said we have a calling here, we have to do something about it. So we launched in July of 2009. And basically it's a new conversation. It's something that people aren't talking about, but it's what did you feel like before you were diagnosed? What symptoms might you have had? And because that information can help cancer get detected sooner, which in turn can save lives.
Well, Carly, let me start with you, because I mean, listen, I mean, you know, we take a look at you and your youth, your vitality. This is exactly what is being talked about. It had to be the furthest thing from your mind. I'll pick up on the question that Jim just put out there. Was there anything before you were diagnosed? Was there anything that would have led you to think, oh, geez, maybe a cancer diagnosis is in my future?
Not at all. I had cancer in my family, but mostly of older generation. Earliest cancer diagnosis in my family was my aunt, who was 35. So I didn't see it in my future at all, and I didn't think it was possible for me. I kind of felt invisible like everybody else does until it actually happens to them. So going through a lot of the stages and figuring out, you know, like diagnosis and just the symptoms that I was having. Doctors had a very hard time diagnosing me because I eventually had colon cancer at 21, and that's not something that someone at my age would normally have. So I think the signs and symptoms were there, but I just think the doctors weren't connecting it because of my age.
Yeah, and of course, you know, furthest thing from your mind is as well, I'm sure. I mean, Rich, you know, you go to the doctors, and all of a sudden, you know, when you hit 50, is when the doctors start to talk about, okay, here's some unpleasant things that we're going to have to do at the next appointment, not 15 to 40.
Right. It's exactly the point. At 15 to 40, both you feel invincible, and doctors look at you like you probably aren't sick. And they're playing the odds a little bit, and you're also just not considering what could be the case. My circumstances were relatively innocuous symptoms early on. I'm a 2-time survivor. That involved fatigue, that involved you know, a little bit of nausea here and there, but nothing really dramatic. Eventually that became severe pain in my joints, which was diagnosed as gout. And it turns out that my tumor was reacting in a way that caused the condition that results in gout. But it had gone on for a year, and I was getting shots in knees and elbows. It was excruciatingly painful. It was debilitating. Before the tumor had grown so much that it actually physically manifested itself by coming through my abdominal wall. And literally, as shocked as I was, the doctors were shocked. It was never a consideration to maybe think about what other things could this possibly be other than what traditionally causes gout: diet and exercise, poor diet and no exercise. So it's getting people to expand their minds and to give young folks the confidence that you know your body better than anybody, to stand up and say, you know, I appreciate the fact that the doctors believe this is the case, but I really think there's more that needs to be looked into.
So when Jim talks to you about 1540, you were like, yeah.
I was the poster child,
yeah.
and that's actually how I got introduced to the organization. Was a guy in my office came over and said, I think I have something that you would really enjoy being involved with. And when I heard the story, it resonated with me. My second diagnosis came around with, again, rather innocuous symptoms, but I knew from my first experience that I had to take things seriously, take the bull by the horns, and I actually got a diagnosis within 24 hours. as opposed to the first cancer, which took almost 2 years before we figured out what was going on.
Let me ask you, Rich Carr is a name that people know in this area. I mean, there's a certain profile. Do you think that the fact that you are telling that story, that has a certain resonance where people go, oh my goodness, if it can, I mean, sort of if it can happen to Rich, geez, I guess it can happen to anyone.
That's the goal, and it's really something I hope for. I get to speak to high school groups often, and something I've heard recently, because it was a local high school, St. John's, from parents of the students who listened to the presentation, were the parents coming saying, you really had an impact on my son. To tell the story the way you did at the age you were at, to think about their own circumstances, and would they be confident enough to ask doctor questions, to say to their parents that a condition exists that might be embarrassing at that age. And the parents came to me and said, it really had an impact. We have a much more open dialogue, and the kids were aware that if something's wrong and it's consistent and it's lasted for more than 2 weeks, you need to pursue it now. That's the way you improve survival rates in that demographic.
Well, Carly, I've got to believe that, I mean, just really just people seeing you, because again, just because of that youth factor,
Yeah.
It's got to hit them. There has to be an impact. And what Rich was just saying, when you went in, I mean, even though you said that there wasn't really a lot in your mind, would you have even been comfortable to talk to the doctor? I mean, the doctor's supposed to know it all.
Right. I mean, I definitely had some uncomfortable feeling. I mean, my main thing was I had really bad discomfort in my abdomen. And so my doctor recommended that I see my gynecologist. It might be a ruptured cyst, something of that nature. So I kind of was just given some pain medication and almost shoot off in a sense, just saying, okay, this should make it feel better, you know, just try this. Then I went back for an internal ultrasound where they couldn't find anything. And then it got to the point where it was so bad I was ending up in the emergency room every day of the week. And then they finally kept me overnight and administered a CAT scan and still didn't find anything. And I had noticed blood in my stool, which is obviously embarrassing to talk about.
Sure.
Me being 21, I don't really want to talk about things like that with my
Right.
doctor. So they were like, well, the only thing we haven't given you is a colonoscopy. Do you want one? I'm like, well, I don't really want one. It's not something someone looks forward
Right,
to.
right.
But I was like, yeah, I mean, why not? That's the only test
Yeah.
I haven't done. So I went into, and those take about 3 weeks to get because they're booked out. I guess they're a popular thing to have. But so I had one, and they couldn't even get the scope through because my tumor was so big. It was blocking 97% of my
Wow.
colon. So.
Wow.
I mean, I never thought something like that.
And I bet they were surprised when they found it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, isn't that something? What's the reaction been to 1540?
It's been fantastic. I mean, we've got 61,000 Facebook followers. Our revenue is growing every year to support the social media and all the work that we're doing in the schools, colleges, and businesses.
The revenue is an important part of it. I mean, in order for you to grow, in order for you to be able to get the word out, in order to be able to reach people, you have to be able to bring those funds in.
Absolutely. I never sold insurance before, but you know, people when they start out insurance, the first ones they go to is their family, then they go to their friends, and they go to their network, and that's what it's been. But what we've done is gotten our family and friends to network to their networks, and so it's really...
Well, 61,000 in what is a fairly short number of years, I think is pretty impressive. I think that's, you know, I think it's certainly testimony to you and to your stature in the community as well. And I know that I kind of keep coming back to that, but I mean, I think for this organization to be as successful as it has been so early, the fact that there are some names that are well known probably doesn't hurt. And I mean, I think, you know, that what you have been able to do. So the fundraising right now, how can we get involved?
Well, in the fundraising part, I think what we do is promote the three-step process. So I might ask you, would you recognize a cancer symptom?
No. I mean, you know, hey, listen, I mean, I'm over 50 and I'm feeling like I'm probably still in the invincible stage.
So it's easy, but what's easy to do is easy not to. So the first step is know when you're feeling good. The second step is when you have a subtle but persistent change to your normal health and it lasts 2 weeks, go get it checked. And the third thing, which is, they're all important, but empower yourself to be part of the conversation with your doctor.
Yeah.
So if we were in this room and we came back here a month later, I said, Hank, what's changed? He'd say, I don't know. Well, your doctor sees 3,000 or 4,000 patients a year, so when you go for your annual visit, he looks at the chart a minute or two before he comes in and sees you. But if you don't tell him what's been going on, during that year.
Right.
He's not a mind reader. So you need to be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And the fundraising, we're getting to more social media. We just hired a new person to work with us in development to get beyond family, friends, network, and businesses. And we have golf events. Rich Carr is hosting a marathon up at Holy Cross at the 25th of October, which it's on our
Terrific.
website.
Great. So website is really kind of the one-stop shopping for
Right.
everything going on with 1540. Gosh, I can't believe how quickly the time goes. Thank you all for coming by and talking
you.
to us
Thank
about
you.
this important
Thank
work.
you.
And obviously, we'll have you back soon and talk some more about some of the events that you have coming up. We have much more to come as well, right here on the Hank Stolz Experience.